It's like when maybe you're planning a proposal, you're trying to propose to your babe, and you stand in front of the mirror and you practice all your lines, and you have it on lockdown,
Mhm.
and then you get there to the proposal venue, and then you forget everything. That's what it is like sometimes. Staging, everything looks perfect. It's like I said, it could be it's your local is maybe like an illusion in quotes, right? Everything could look perfect on dev on staging, but then production could be a totally different ball game. In this big 2025, you should not still be saying the version I'm using on my laptop is different from what is running in production. Standardize your environment.
Some people don't set up monitor on stage. Yeah, they don't need to. They only need it in production. But how do you know something will fail in production if you have not also tested and monitored it on stage? So
All of you, stay with me. I will not add code again ever.
yep.
No more hard coding. And and if after all of this, it's still only working on your machine and not working with yours, your machine is not special though. Just know that
You will deploy your machine.
congratulations to you. You have just built yourself a personal project. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, guys, to another episode.
This is our third episode. You guys,
Mhm.
you're working with us. The last one that we posted, we got a lot of love, we got a lot of comments. You people can relate. A lot of you people were siding with Ido over me.
I mean, Friday deployment. So,
Yeah. So
um,
I feel like that topic is still something that everybody sits on the fence about. It's
mhm.
not good, it's not bad, it's just something that you have to do. And
Yeah.
a lot of you, you were siding with Ido. I don't take it personally, Sha, but let's see how that goes moving forward. Today, I want to talk about something very, very dear to my heart. Something very, very important to me, and you people will know why as we go along. You will see. You people have to side with me on this one, but we're talking about it works on my machine, but fails in prod.
God. Yeah.
I feel like in my career, in my entire career, or maybe in the early days of my career, I use that line more than more than anything else.
Oh, why do you think so, though? Why do you think that was the case?
Because how else would I explain? How else would I explain that something that I've tested or I thought I tested that was working fine, all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're telling me now that it's not working in production. What other explanation is there? It was working on my machine now. So,
True.
but there was a point in my life where I was saying that line at least maybe 3 times every week. I had to, but well, bad as bad. I was a junior, or a beginner, or an intern, whatever you call it. So it wasn't as bad, but I mean, it made me look inward and look at myself better to see what I was doing differently. But that's what we're going to be talking today. Talking about today.
Yeah.
What's on my machine or feels in prod. As usual, we'll banter about it and then we'll give you some technical tips and things that you can take into consideration. If this is your own story, if you're someone like me, you
Mhm.
know, you want to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. I think we can actually before we go deep into this topic, we can talk about. Well, I think one of the major things I want us to talk about concerning this is what are the common causes of this kind of situation. Like, what would happen that would make you be in a position that the next possible thing you will say is, "Man, it works on my machine. I don't know what's going on." Right? So, and I think there are a lot of things that could cause this thing. So I think we can we can like talk about one each alternatively,
Mhm.
and then look into like have more discussions around them. So common
Okay.
causes of these works on my machine issues will be first environment mismatch, in the case of maybe different OS, different versions of a library, different dependencies. um, your configuration was written in a Windows machine, you are deploying in a Linux environment or a Linux environment, and things like that. So I think these as this is one of the common causes of that phrase, that we can look. So I've of course I've already started, and then maybe Chris, we can just talk about this for a couple of minutes, and then we'll go to other key subcategories of the topic.
One analogy that came to my head was I can only picture it. In fact, two self. I have a son, and it's like when you send your well behaved, your properly trained child to school, only for the school to call you and say he started a fight in school, like
Wow.
this is my precious little boy that cannot hurt a fly. Why is he starting a fight in school? That's
Yeah.
the first analogy that came to my mind when we were talking about something works in in on my machine and not in prod. And that's because you see the local environment, or what we call dev in this case, it's somewhat of an illusion.
Mhm.
It's an illusion, right? Because your local machine is not the real world. So
Yeah.
when you test something and it works on your local and you move it to prod and then something is wrong, it's because, like you always said, there could be a lot of mismatches, right? Because local is like a stress-free playground. When you're in a playground, there is nothing and you're just stress-free, and then you go to prod and prod is like a war zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only way I can put it. There are so many things that could be wrong. It could
Yeah.
be a segmentation problem. It could be something with the OS, like Idowu said. It could be a system crash. Anyway, if you're sure doing this in I already see just gonna start updating your resume because
Remember when we were in primary school, when you go to math class, and they give you 2 plus 2 as example, example 3 plus 2, and then for assignment they say do long division, show your workings. That's how dev and production usually is. When did these things happen? Like examples are straightforward. Classwork is just a little bit harder than homework or exam. They tell you to do long division, divide 99 by 9, show your
like
workings.
that
So it's
and
totally
it's
gone.
very different.
Yeah,
It's
most times it's very different. But
very
I think this also leads us to one of the solutions of this kind of issues.
well, we'll come to solutions later. Let's see
Okay.
your problems first.
Okay. Another problem could be configuration differences.
Yeah,
So
true.
if your local environment is so different from your staging and your production, and if one of the things we talked about last week was people setting up CI/CD pipeline. So
Mhm.
if you are not deploying with an effective or a very good CI/CD pipeline, and the local environment is totally different from staging,
Yeah.
and staging is totally different from production, you
Yeah.
are bound to have that works on my machine and not in production problem. Because see, there's that drift, if there's that total change in environment, then that will certainly happen. That will certainly happen.
I think another problem, or what I experienced, right, partially, is that a lot of people think that once you're using Docker or you're using containers, as long as this misconception that, oh, it's a container, once you package everything, it would work the same on every environment that you deploy it on. That could
Mhm.
be partly true,
Mhm.
right? It could be partly true. Yes, that's the problem that Docker is meant to solve,
Yeah.
in quotes. But sometimes when you forget to lock your dependencies, and
Yeah.
then maybe the Python version you're running on your local is different from what is running in production because you did not lock your dependencies, or maybe on your local you have an M file that you're using to run it to test that is not necessarily in the Docker container, and then in production you don't have it there. Those are
Yeah.
some of like the problems that you can have. Does that mean Docker is not doing what it's meant to do? No, it is. But like you always said, there could be some small, misconfigurations here and there. Or you thinking that, back to the CI/CD topic, you thinking that, oh, you tested in staging, so it should be fine. You've run. But what if your staging is 6 months old and your production is, you know, staging could be 6 months back, is running a very, very old version of the app, and production is on its own timeline, or your staging even has maybe just five test users because maybe a small application and blah blah blah. So your staging is five test users, and then on production you have 5 million real human beings that are clicking buttons like maniacs,
Uh,
pardon the word, but
yeah.
so there could be a lot of misconception.
Mhm.
It's just different. It's as if if I have a stupid analogy again. It's like when maybe you're planning a proposal, you're trying to propose to your babe, and you stand in front of the mirror and you
Uh,
practice all your lines, and you have it on lockdown, and
mhm.
then you get there to the proposal venue and then you forget everything. That's what it is like sometimes. Staging, everything looks perfect. It's like I said, it could be it's your local is maybe like an illusion in quote, right? Everything could look perfect on dev, on staging, but then production could be a totally different ball game. So that's one of the things that we'll be talking about, like solutions as well. How to make sure that your environments are consistent through and through. Some of the things that we talked about last week would still find its way here because these are DevOps wahala problems that we face, regularly. So
Yeah,
this is a good point to slot in that if you did not watch the last episode,
you
go and
should.
watch it because
Yeah.
we talked about a lot of things that would also find its place here as well because different solutions, you know what I mean, though.
One other common cause of this issue that we're speaking about today
Mhm,
is database disparities between environment. So I've seen cases where in the local environment, developers are using maybe SQLite because
mhm,
it's easy to set up and all, and
mhm,
then in production, production database is Postgres, for instance, right?
mhm,
That change in database, that slight change in maybe SQL query or dependency or that flavor of database or choice of database could
mhm,
also cause this issue because you've tested locally with SQLite, everything is working, you've done your test, you've done your load test, you've done configuration, Q has tested, and then you go to production and you're using a different database. That could be a problem. Also, it could also be a version of database. So you can be using MySQL 5.7 locally, and then in production you're using MySQL 5, 8 point whatever. That could also cause this issue. So basically, we are just giving you everything that like possibilities of
yeah.
what cause like this. It works on my machine. It doesn't work in prod kind of issue. Yeah.
Your local machine could be like soft life. When you're just living the soft life is you're running your M4 Pro,
Mm-hmm.
your MacBook M4 Pro, and
Mm-hmm.
then front is there one old EC2 instance that is not even that does not have the latest configuration.
Yeah.
So you're running soft life, like you're inside Uber with AC, and prod is just like down for. Please make sure that these two things that they tally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very see your local host. So this is we're wrapping up all the problems that you could have. And one major one that I've seen happen time and time again is networking. You need to understand that when you're running something on localhost, I don't mean localhost the community now. I mean localhost, localhost, localhost.
Yeah.
Send something, call blah 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 127.0.0.1, and you get your response immediately. That's your local host. But on production, there are networking terminologies like your rate limiting, your firewalls, there are timeouts. These are things that you need to account for even as a DevOps person. That's why if that could be one of the reasons why you're running something on your local host and then it goes immediately and then in prod it's failing. In that case, you need to optimize your networking environment, your networking setup to
Mm-hmm.
accommodate issues like that. There need to be a lot of buffers and all of that. Things like, oh, maybe your front end is not calling back. Yes, some of these things might be more application specific. Maybe you need to allow cores and whatnot. Some of this might be application specific, but it also tallies, with the DevOps side of things, right? And it's just a lot of things, on your production there is a shared network. You can think, oh, because you're running on AWS or you're running on Azure or GCP it should be fast. That's not necessarily the case. You need to understand that these machines are in physical data centers and you share this network with thousands of other machines in the world. So your API calls could actually be timing out because there is a lot more networking particular configurations that you need to do. So aside from it being something that you just say that, oh, it works on my machine, it doesn't, there might be some technical reasons as to why that is even happening in the first place. Or don't go and be like, okay, maybe not now, don't go and be like let me say people, don't go and be like people that would use AI, ChatGPT,
Mhm.
or write the code and you just copy it down and paste it and expect it to work as it should
Yeah.
because, well, it's AI. No, now.
Okay, so I also want to add one more thing, then we'll go to the next subtopic. First of all, this phrase works on my machine does not work in prod. In some cases, it might not be your fault as a DevOps engineer.
This phrase, I mean, this phrase.
Phrase.
I heard this phrase.
This phrase. So sometimes it might not be your fault. And the reason I say so is because there's some things you cannot foresee. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That if you are building a new application, you sometimes you cannot predict the volume of traffic that will be coming in, or you might not be able to accurately predict the volume of traffic that will be coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Some things there are some things that you will just miss. So
Yes.
sometimes, just a few times, it might not be your fault. So I think we can just recap and then we'll move to like best practices to kind of prevent this kind of issue. So first, we talked about environment mismatch. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about configuration drift. We talk about database disparities. You spoke about networking.
Mm-hmm.
You also said something about locking your dependencies, which is very good. So I think with all this, we would then go to what do you think are the best practices that DevOps engineers, software engineers can put in place so that they can prevent, avoid, and also correct or fix this kind of issues that they have in their company. So, Praise, you can start.
Okay, the very first one that I would start with is something we've already mentioned before, but
Mhm.
now we can get to emphasize on it, is standardize your environment. And there are different methods that you can use to standardize your environment. It is in this big 2025, you should not still be saying the version I'm using on my laptop is different from what is running in production.
Mhm.
Standardize your environment with infrastructure as code tools, containers. I mentioned previously that, people use, containers, Docker in code, and they just expect it to fix all the problems. You need to do some more work than just saying, "Oh, I've written my Docker image and that should be fine." Make sure that you're using Docker as it should to containerize your application. If it works, ideally, if it works in your container or it works locally, and you have the same configurations in production, then it should work. But a lot of people make a lot of simple mistakes in quote
Mhm.
that could cause some form of drift. And that is where things like infrastructure as code comes in. Use a lot of infrastructure as code tools. We have Terraform. I think Terraform is like the most popular now. But there are a lot of tools that you can use. You can use Terraform, you could use Ansible, you could use Helm. You know, let your infrastructure be consistent across environments. So when you use infrastructure as code tools, whatever you're using to deploy, maybe your test environment is what you're also using in staging, is what you're also using in production. So
Mhm.
that way, even if anybody needs to make a change, they can just go to the same code or the configuration, make the change there. And whenever you need to run your pipeline again to apply those changes, you can see that, okay, somebody has changed uh, something, from this version to this version. So immediately it is very obvious what the change is. But then if you're still doing a lot of ClickUps, you're going, oh, I want to set up an EC2 instance and I'm going to AWS and I'm clicking, 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 then you can miss out on little things like this. So it is worth it to invest in infrastructure as code. In fact, it is compulsory. So if you're a DevOps engineer now,
Exactly. You know what I wanted to say.
in this big 2025,
Mhm.
don't have one, at least, I mean, there are a lot of tools. I wouldn't say that you need to learn everything, but
Mhm.
at least have one and master it. I would
Yeah.
probably recommend Terraform. Again, depends on your use case, but
Mhm.
have one and master it. Terraform is the most popular. You find a lot of resources about it online. Master it. Even if your organization currently already has a lot of this infrastructure set up manually, you might be thinking, oh, You can always rewrite and import. That's another conversation,
Mhm.
totally.
Yeah.
But even if you join an organization and they are doing things anyhow, that's why you're there. You're there like a change agent. Sorry, I'm already I'm already going out of scope. But
DevOps
you
is a culture.
there.
Okay.
Yes, it's
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. It's a culture, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
Standardize your environment. It is not okay. It is not okay for you to have something else running in dev environment and something else running in prod, and you cannot even tell that there is a drift. So that would mean infrastructure as code, like I've already said, and then a consistent pipeline. Ido has been hammering this pipeline thing, but yes, literally everything,
Yeah.
Yes, over to you though.
Talking about infrastructure as code,
Mm,
I don't. First of all, I don't think anybody should be clicking around cloud consoles to create any resource at this point in DevOps, right? There are a lot of tools. But recently, I was using one tool called SST.
mm,
It's like for serverless. It's basically unique to serverless for infrastructure as code. So there are a lot of tools for infrastructure as code already. So I don't think any resource should not be created in the cloud by clicking around. You should use a an infrastructure as code to go to anyone you choose. Now, talking about infrastructure as code, I also think that in the DevOps world, we have a lot of tools.
mm-hmm,
And one problem I see with those engineers is that they know these tools, they use all these tools, but they don't optimize or maximize the functionality of these tools. So,
mm-hmm,
for instance, I could be speaking to somebody and somebody's talking about Terraform and this, and the person doesn't know about Terraform workspaces, right?
mm-hmm,
And in this with this topic we're talking about, Terraform workspaces is a very key functionality of Terraform that you can use to make sure that each environment is as similar as possible, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So also, for instance, Elm. Some people, I've spoken to those engineers where their ultimate experience with Elm charts is using external Elm charts. They don't. So you can take it a step further to creating your own M chart for application deployment within your company, and
mm-hmm,
also that will also enable you to make sure that staging and production configuration are as similar as possible by just a change of value files.
mm-hmm,
So all these things, knowing the technology is one, but maximizing the technology in such a way that you can make it work for you is another thing entirely. I mean, in future episodes, we might go deeper into technologies and talking about what they offer the DevOps world. But these are just pointers to know that it's fine to know that Terraform is used for infrastructure as code, but there are some features that Terraform gives you that makes your life easy. Like I mentioned, Terraform workspaces.
mm-hmm,
Also, I also have noticed that in some companies, when they write Terraform, the DevOps engineer just write Terraform code and do Terraform apply from his machine.
mm-hmm,
I was reading up on a concept called continuous operation, right? Continuous operation is just everything you are doing CI/CD with your application, all the software development life cycle that you have for your application, you are
mm-hmm,
supposed to have that also for your infrastructure as code. So code review, testing, validation, deployment, everything. You're supposed to also have it for your infrastructure as code. That will give the team visibility over the changes that are going to production and the effect of those changes when they get to production. That way, other members of the team can review and also like for instance, you are deleting a database.
mm-hmm,
Other people on the team can review. Are you sure you want to delete the database or this is just a mistake? So that way, that will also give you the mindset of a software engineer that's trying to roll out a new feature. That will also give you that kind of visibility. So, but moving on, we also spoke about CI/CD.
mm,
Most DevOps engineers think CI/CD is just for applications. You as a DevOps engineer, you need to benefit from not just so CI/CD is not just a technology, it's not a concept. It's something you as a DevOps engineer need to use and use to its fullest to make sure it works for you. Also, I would just also to add to this best practice is observability. You need to
mm,
do monitoring. You need to do alerting. You need to if you know you deploy to staging, and you some people don't set up monitor on the stage. Yeah, they don't need to. They only need it in production. But how do you know something will fail in production if you have not also tested and monitored it on staging? So maybe you're not testing, maybe you're not configuring observability as wide or as large as production, but I think there's some key things you need to monitor in staging that will help you prevent issues in production. So you need to set up metrics, you need to set up alerting, you need to set up Prometheus and Grafana, for instance, or Elasticsearch, whatever tool you want to use, whatever um, chain of tools you want to use. Observability helps you to see into application behavior, to see
Mhm.
into infrastructure behavior, and that can inform your decision in production. So if you're on staging and you're using 2 core CPU and maybe 5 GB RAM, and you're already maxing on staging, it means that should inform that you need more resources or a better combination of resources in production. So that way you'll be able to see what you need to do and how you need to do it. Yeah. Last week, Praise mentioned feature flags and canary deployment, blue green deployment. Yeah. So this is also applicable in this case. So when you have proper blue green deployment, when you have proper canary deployment, when you have proper rollout for your application changes, infrastructure changes, in some cases also, this will also prevent this kind of uh, sharp change from a version of an application to another application, and then you'll be able to prevent this issue of it works on my machine, it doesn't work in prod. Praise, do you have anything to add for us?
I am giving you serious bad eye.
Why?
Wait, okay, as you said everything that I want to say now, what else is left to say? I'm giving you
No,
serious bad eye.
I
But
mean,
anyways,
yeah,
see, I'm a very wise woman. I was already thinking
in the future.
10 steps ahead of you because I know you will say everything. Once they give you an inch, you take a
All
mile.
right, I will stop talking. The next episode, I will be quiet.
See, all of you, stay with me. I will not add code again ever.
Yep, yep, yep.
No more hard coding.
Mhm,
That is one problem that I've seen happen over and over and over and over again.
mhm.
And in this 2025, I will not add code ever again.
I
You
will
see,
not ever again.
even if you follow everything that we're saying, you have your infrastructure as code, you have your pipelines, you have everything, and you're still at coding, it's all a mess.
Mhm,
It's all a mess. You see the scenario that Idowu gave, where he talked about, a database mismatch. It could be something as little as, in your environment, you have had coded maybe your local database, and then it goes into prod, and everybody's connecting to the local DB, and then it takes hours of troubleshooting to wonder, oh, where is the problem coming from? And then you see that, oh, it was coded somewhere. And so even though maybe your environment variables is showing something else, because it's already hard coded, it's taking preference. What you've hard coded is taking preference over what's in the end, and then you spend hours debugging only to see that it was a silly mistake that could have been avoided. So please, as much as you want to use infrastructure as code, as much as you want to have monitoring, as much as you want to have a very standard pipeline, please, there are a lot of ways that you can store your variables or your secrets that you don't have to put them in code in your code base. I know you might be thinking that, oh, it's a small project, it's not a big project. So even if I put it on GitHub or it shows up in GitHub Actions, it's not a problem. It
mhm,
is a problem because you cannot envisage or estimate where that code will get to or who would look at it and have access into your AWS. I remember what one year was like, I think it was like 2 years ago, where there were a lot of cases of people using, like, you just see that your AWS account, your cost is blowing up because somebody else has accessed your cluster and is using it to farm, I be mine coins or something.
Bitcoin.
It was such Bitcoin, it was such a big deal like a
Mhm,
few years ago. And how? Because maybe you had coded your AWS access keys or you did stuff like that. So even if you have, infrastructure as code, there are still some basic things that you need to do. there are a lot of secret management systems that you can take advantage of. And some of these things are open source. So it's not even going to cost you an extra dime, to
Mhm.
configure these things. There are a lot of secret managers. There, AWS has a secret manager. HashiCorp has a secret manager called Vault. There are Kubernetes secrets. There are just a lot of ways that you can abstract this information and such that there is no hard coding, so that's one thing. And another thing I also wanted to talk about, oh, the word already mentioned it, is
Can
you
you
see
talk about
now.
it? You can talk about it. You can talk
Another
about
thing is about locking dependencies, like I mentioned before. Please don't just use latest. When you want to pull a Docker image and you
it.
just,
Yeah.
or you set it and you say latest, pull latest. What do you know? Okay, you might say that you're the only one that has access to maybe push images, and so even if it's fetching the latest, it's fine. But you're not always going to be on that project. It's not best practice. So instead of constantly, especially in production, don't just say use the latest, or even application, or maybe your Docker file. For
Mhm.
example, maybe you're running something on Node, and maybe on your local you're using node 16, and then in production your Docker file you set it to use latest, and maybe latest is node 21. I don't know, I don't write node, or node 21 or node 22 or whatever, and then you're using 16 on your local. You need to tie your dependencies. That way you're still using containers, but what you are containerizing is wrong, and it
Okay.
could set you up for failure. So it's not enough to know that, oh, I need to use containers, oh, I need to use infrastructure as code, oh, I need to, have a proper pipeline. But these are little mistakes that we have seen, over the years of our short careers, and even mistakes that we have made personally, that don't just use latest. It might look convenient and easy at the time being, but if you're running something in production and maybe a new overzealous developer joins the team, makes changes, pushes it to your container registry, because he's not aware of the whole process, and
Mhm.
pushes the container registry, and maybe for whatever reason your pipeline picks up the change and runs again, and it just runs because you're asking it to pull latest now. It pulls all the latest untested changes, So that's something that you should consider as well. Ido already mentioned using feature flags. We talked a bit more about this last week as well. Feature flags is like you are giving people tospi. When you want to make a change, anybody what tospi is, just flow with me. It's like you're giving people tospi, like, oh yeah.
Don't say to me again.
What's the English word? I don't know. That,
Test.
uh, you're giving people tospi, jare. You want them to, 10% of the users. Oh yeah, first take this new feature. How do you?
Right.
In a way, it's like A/B testing.
Mhm.
But the good thing is that if maybe there is a mistake or a problem with the tospy that you are giving them, I'm sorry, if there's a mistake with what you're pushing to these people, you can already immediately catch it. And even though it would affect, if it was something that if you're pushing to all your users, they get it and it affects them immediately. In this case, you can already catch it because it's only 10% of the users, and then you can kill it right there with the feature flag. It's as simple as turn on and off, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So that's something that's is very, very important. Idowu also mentioned, see, I'm just going to pick up on Idowu's point because I said everything I wanted to say. Idowu also mentioned, monitoring, and please, it's very important. And don't, I think one mistake that I made was that, or that I made, I'm calling myself out now.
Interested in this.
you you would think you set up monitoring, you would think you set up something very robust, you can see all the logs, but then you don't have alerts. Please, are you going to sit in front of, this is not trading or forex trading where you sit in front of a big screen and you're looking at the graphs, oh, everything looks good. You can set up the most robust monitoring in the world. If you don't get alerted when something is wrong, it's maybe your users or your CEO that will be calling you in the morning. What happened? Clients have been calling me because your maybe your application is down and the users are finding out before you. Just resign. Shame, shame. Just resign immediately, please. Alert. So alerts are very, 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 very important. Don't just set up your Prometheus beautiful. Don't set up your Grafana beautiful, and everything is there, and then you're not getting alerted. You know. And then another thing, while we are talking about this monitoring, is that sometimes it's you can miss out. So there's something called open telemetry, and I think Obul as well does it, where I don't know if I pronounce it right though. You shall get the gist, where you can trace like your communication between services. So
Mhm.
if a service A is trying to talk to service B, and then there is a drop here, you can it's like a small graph where you can just go already and see where the traffic is dropping. So you don't have to like hop between, oh, is it from the database? Oh, the logs are not saying much. Oh, this, that. Distributed tracing is your friend in that case. You know, I don't want to be pushing tools at you, but these are things that should improve your overall DevOps portfolio. It's portfolio, right? Your
Yeah,
overall DevOps stuff.
yeah.
Stuff that you do. Yeah, it will say one or two more if you have anything, but no, I don't have
No,
anything.
I think we have covered it. I think we have covered everything actually.
Ah, I remember one.
Okay. I mean, go on.
I remember one. And
Yeah.
that one is something that a lot of developers hate. I remember when I used to work at Terragon, all the developers used to hate me for it because I don't know if you can guess. Write tests. Tests. A lot of tests.
They used to hate you because you're not you're not writing code
Yes.
first.
I wasn't coding Golang or Python or any of those things. My work was just DevOps, but yet I'll be hounding them that where is your UAT test? Where is your this one test? Where is your that one test? And me, I didn't understand the amount of work that would go into writing those tests. So my own was just, if you don't have this thing, your project is not going forward, that sort of thing. And I was just, and they hated me for it because apparently I might be wrong, but it's a lot of work. But then it's something you write once and you can get moving. Please write tests. If your test is failing, fix it. It's easy for you to see if some like you can't always test every scenario. You can't always envisage every scenario that needs to be tested. But if you write a standard, tests what am I forgetting a lot of words? If you it will help me now. If you have that test stuff, that you can test, then it's 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 easy for you to run it. And then make sure that whatever you're testing is as realistic as can be,
Mhm.
as similar to your production environment. If you know that this thing on production is going to target 5 million users that are firing maybe per second, then you don't test with 5 users. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
Because then you can say, but I've tested now. Yes, you've tested, but you will see shege in production. So test as closely to
What is
uh
expected?
yeah, what your realistic human
Mhm.
hi, what your realistic human interaction will be. I think I should stop talking now because I'm already forgetting. Before I go on tabon, I'm already
All
forgetting most of my words. So yeah,
right. I mean, this is also a good place to start rounding up. I think
Mhm,
I've done this. Earlier I did a summary on
mhm,
the key takeaways. Basically, identify the common causes of this issue, of this works on my machine doesn't work in prod issues. When you identify those issues, then you come to the next step of what are the best practices that you can put in place. And this is what I've been discussing for the last 20, 15 to 20 minutes. What are the
mhm,
best practices you can put in place to make sure these issues don't happen, or at least they don't happen as often, or at least when they happen, how to fix them. So these are everything we talk about: observability, feature flags, yada yada yada, throughout the last 15, 20 minutes. And I think now we can just talk about the key takeaways. The key takeaway, well, I think one of the key takeaway for me is, first of all, not every issue like this is your fault. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes it is. And if you go through the list of best practices we have mentioned so far, you'll be able to identify one or two things that you are probably not doing well that
mhm,
could fix or address this issue of environment disparities and things like that. And I think one very interesting thing that Praise said was using using when it comes to Docker images and say Kubernetes,
Mhm.
using images with the latest tag is a very bad practice to have, because not only does it makes you prone, not only does it make you prone to this issue, it also makes it difficult for you to roll back when there's an issue, because the previous latest has already been replaced, so there's nothing to roll back to. Like, so that's why it's good and very intelligent to use versions for your Docker images. So yeah, I think one major direction we've always taken this podcast is we are very keen on automation, CI/CD. We are very
Mhm.
keen on testing. The president just said talk about testing. You can also test your infrastructure. There's Terra test, so you can test your infrastructure. Monitoring is very key. Chris said something interesting called tracing. Look into tracing. Tracing will really help your life when it comes to troubleshooting and debugging live issues. So that way you can shorten the time it takes to recover from an issue, because now you can trace and see where the bottleneck is. So this, I think that's basically the summary of today's episode. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, it works on my machine, doesn't work in prod. Is a very common issue with DevOps engineers, but we've discussed how you can fix them, how you can address them, and things like that. So yeah, I want to praise to sign
and
up.
and if after all of this, it's still only working on your machine and not working with yours, your machine is not special though. Just know that
We'll deploy your machine.
congratulations to you. You have just built yourself a personal project, not
Okay.
a oh. So, but we believe that these are just some of the suggestions. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. Like we've always said, we are not know-it-alls. That once you do this, do this, that's all.
Hmm?
So please, we value your comments, your
Opinion. Oh boy.
like English is not my friend today, but we value your we value your comments, we value your responses, your interactions. A lot of you reached out privately as well. That's okay. Thank you so much for all the comments. Why do I feel like anybody that watches this would think Ash is lying that nobody reached out? But anyway, thank you. And we value your comments. Please, if there are any more tips that, maybe you've experienced personally and you feel like, this thing save somebody's Friday night. And before we go,
Wow.
another before you start saying it works on my machine, does not work before, don't deploy on Friday. I will
I
still
mean, if you have that issue, if you have the issue of you have a business deployed on Friday.
don't deploy on Friday,
You have a
please.
business deployed on Friday.
So thank you once again, everybody. Thank you for riding with us. Thank you for listening to us banter and talk about these things. Next week's episode, I'll be next 2 weeks, whenever this is airing.
Next episode.
I'll just say airing. Whenever this is airing, we would it's still going to be continuation on the series DevOps Wahala. Maybe it will be our final series. I don't know. Just
Final episode.
maybe I don't even know. Just stick with us, Sha. You people, DevOps, there's plenty problems that we need to cover. So this is the second episode in the DevOps Wahala series. So maybe there might still be 2 more, 3 more, 4 more, depending on how you guys interact and give us problems and things you want us to talk about. So we're still continuing in the DevOps Wahala series. So
Yeah.
write with us and then see you next time. And don't forget, you can listen on your favorite podcast channels. You can also watch on YouTube. On YouTube, Abby. That's on
Yeah.
YouTube.
It's for the
YouTube
vibe.
are your favorite podcast channel, sir. Thank
And
you so
remember to drop your stories of
much.
of my machine doesn't work in prod. If you have experience, or if you know someone that has experienced something like that. Till next episode, have a nice time, guys. Bye.
Mhm.